The next couple of weeks at Bells, we're looking into a lovely little book from a very ancient part of the Bible. It's the book of Ruth, and it's a story that comes from probably about 1,000 years before Jesus was even born. It's the story of two women, essentially, and they live in tough times. And Naomi is somebody who finds herself widowed, living in a foreign land. Both her sons have died. And she has to work within that situation and see what life might be like for her and her daughter. So I'm going to use Rick Warren's 5 cards of life to work through this story with Naomi from the book of Ruth. Different to us. Now, the first 4 cards you have to play as they are. There is nothing you can do about them. Naomi's circumstances were what they were, and ours are how we find them. She is widowed. She has lost both her adult sons. She's now living in a land where she had gone to live with her husband, but it's not home for her. She has no wealth of her own. That is what it is. And she has 2 daughters-in-law. She can't change that. Our connections are what they are. My dad always jokes, you can choose your friends, but you're stuck with your family. I guess he's right. And for Naomi, there's that sense of, well, what are my connections? In this place, now that my husband is gone and I have no sons, what are my connections? I have 2 daughters-in-law. What are our connections? Who are the people to whom we are connected? What is our sense of where we might belong and what our connections might be? What's our sense of a connection to God? Consciousness. See, for Naomi, it's about how other people are conscious of her. They look at her and they see a widow who's not one of us, who has nothing, who has no sons, and they measure her worth. They put her in a box. That's how they're conscious of her. And people have a consciousness about us, and we can't change what people think of us. What does she think of herself? How does that play upon her own self-awareness? What about us? How do we see ourselves? Do we see ourselves in the way other people would describe us, in the boxes they would put us in? Or is there some sense in which God says, no, I have a very different awareness of you? Don't know. And the last card that we all have to play is our chemistry. I can't help what I am. I am a middle-aged bloke, tall, skinny. That's the genes. That's the way it is. My personality is what it is, and Naomi finds herself in that same situation. She is a woman of a certain age, comes from a certain ethnic background, a nationality and a culture, and that is part of who she is, and that cannot change. But there is one card that we all get to play, and this changes everything. At least it changes how we deal with all the other cards. There are choices to be made. And for Naomi, there are big decisions to be had. Is this where I stay? Do I simply say that these other things, my connections, my consciousness, my circumstance, they will define me and they will settle everything? Or is there something else, a sense of something calling to her to go home, to be perhaps back amongst different circumstances, connected in another way to the people of God? Those are things, and she must work them through, and her daughters-in-law must too. And so Naomi has these big choices to make. And interestingly, so do her daughters-in-law. And it's Ruth, after whom the book is named, who makes one of the most beautiful statements in the whole of the Bible. When Naomi decides to make the choice to go back and be among the people of God, to change her circumstance and her sense of connectedness. And Ruth turns to her and says, "You're my mother-in-law. You're the only connection I've got. You are part of my circumstance." And she says, "Wherever you go, I'll go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. How do we play the choice card? What is it for us when we look at our circumstances and our connections and the way things are, and we choose to hear the voice of God and to work out where it is we belong, how we're connected, and who will be our God?